Hello everyone, Undercooked History here. For today's video, I want you all to imagine a scenario with me. While it might sound crazy, I promise you it'll eventually make sense. You all know the vice president, right? This guy? You know, with all the weird faces? That's right, J.D. Vance. Okay, so let's say in a couple of months or so, around October, that guy's gone. He's resigned. A huge scandal is uncovered with insurmountable evidence, and he's gone the way of disco. Okay? Cool. Sorry, JD. It's nothing personal. Well, that's just no good, because the law says the president has to have a VP. So in order to solve this, Christmas comes early. And at the beginning of December 2025, Trump taps this guy, Steve Scalise, the current House Majority Leader, to be his new VP. Congrats on the promotion, by the way, Steve. Yippee! Next, let's jump ahead less than a year later to August of 2026. Impossible has now happened. You know all those cases that Trump had against him between 2021 and his comeback in 2024 that we all thought went away? Nope. One case got through, and the Big Don himself has resigned the presidency.
Yeah. Like that's ever gonna happen.
Good news for Steve, though, because he's yet again been promoted. And this time to a job that actually matters. Thankfully, though, just as Steve Scalise is taking the oath of office to become the 48th President of the United States, you wake and realize it was all just a bad dream.
Wait a minute!
That actually happened 50 years ago to these three guys, Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew, and Gerald Ford. On August 9th, 1974, following the resignation of President Nixon, newly promoted Vice President Ford took the oath of office to become the 38th President of the United States. Done partially in an attempt to put the whole Watergate affair behind the nation, a subject which many other people have great videos on that I highly recommend, Ford's primary job as the new Commander-in-Chief was to restore confidence and trust in the White House. So what's Ford's first move to do this? Let's see. Ford gives pardon to Nixon, who regrets my mistakes.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
It's safe to say that Ford's pardoning of Nixon was widely unpopular, with his approval rating diving 21 points almost immediately after the announcement. Although slightly in Ford's defense, I think an approval dip to dive was likely inevitable for Ford, pardon or not, considering this was just at the beginning of his partial term, and presidents historically start off with a higher approval rating than what they end with. This, along with an increasingly poor economy, ailed by a condition dubbed stagflation, a term used to describe a combination of high inflation and unemployment matched by stagnant economic growth, gave President Ford an incredibly hard and largely unpopular 2.5 years as president. This frustration ultimately reached a boiling point when just barely a year into his presidency, on September 5th, 1975, an assassination attempt occurred against the president. And after surviving that unscathed, just 17 days later, on September 22nd, 1975, Ford was subjected to another assassination attempt. It's important to recognize that this was still relatively in the time of assassinations and widespread protestations. So while it fits the general chaotic trend of the late 60s and early 70s, it still feels wild to me that something like this happened. I can't even imagine what it would be like today, particularly this close together. Anyways, not to discredit the importance of the first attempt on September 5th, which is probably the more well-known incident, as the perpetrator was a member of the Manson family cult, the focus of today's video will primarily consist of the second assassination attempt, where Vietnam veteran Oliver Sipple saved the president's life. As previously mentioned, the attack occurred on the 22nd of September. Like the first, it took place in California, but this time specifically in San Francisco. Around 3:30 p.m., Ford finished giving a speech at the World Affairs Council, and when he emerged from the St. Francis Hotel at Union Square, he stopped to wave to a crowd of reporters and citizens across the street from him. In the crowd were both Sarah Jane Moore, the would-be assailant from West Virginia, who as of the recording of this video is still alive at 95, and Oliver Sipple, the tragic hero of today's story, hailing from Detroit, Michigan.
No! No, not Detroit! No! No, please! Anything but that!
At approximately 40 feet from Ford, Moore fired a shot from her .38 special revolver, and it missed his head by a mere 5 inches and landed in the wall of the building behind Ford. Following the sound of the first gunshot, Sipple dove at Moore.
Get down, Mr. President!
Grabbing her arm with the gun as she pulled the trigger for a second shot, causing an alteration in the bullet's trajectory that led to 42-year-old taxi driver John Ludwig being shot in the groin, which he thankfully survived. Immediately after, Sipple and San Francisco Police Captain Timothy Hetrich grabbed and subdued the rest of Moore as Ford was rushed off by Secret Service to safety. Now you're probably wondering how this could be anything other than beneficial to the life of Oliver Sipple. I mean, wounded Vietnam War veteran saves the life of the president who just 3 years ago was representing his state. It's the kind of story that could make political careers. It just gives similar vibes to John Kerry and John McCain, other Vietnam War veterans that became prominent politicians. He was even friends with rising politician Harvey Milk. Oh, right. He was also a closeted gay man in the 1970s. Sipple was a well-known member of the local San Francisco gay community, having participated in pride events and campaigned for Harvey Milk when he first ran for the Board of Supervisors in 1973, a job which Milk was running for again in 1975 after losing the last time. At first, the press listened to Sipple's request to avoid mentioning his sexuality in reports, and even didn't want to be called a hero. But when Milk caught wind that the man who saved Ford was Sipple, he saw this as a golden opportunity for the gay cause, saying to a friend, "It's too good an opportunity. For once we can show that gays do heroic things, not just all that caca about molesting children and hanging out in bathrooms." And so the following day, Milk and another man, Reverend Ray Broshears, the head of the Lavender Panthers, a gay rights activist group, contacted the San Francisco Chronicle and outed Sipple as gay to columnist Herb Kahn. Following this report, Sipple and his family were berated non-stop by reporters asking for answers. Despite Sipple's best efforts to hide from the press and remain unimportant, this eventually caused his parents to disown him, as they were unaware of his sexuality and found it to be appalling. Through all of this, Milk continued to speak on Sipple's behalf to the press without his approval, suggesting Ford didn't invite him to the White House because of his sexuality. Although he did send Sipple a letter 3 days after the story saying, "I want you to know how much I appreciated your selfless actions last Monday. The events were a shock to us all, but you acted quickly and without fear for your own safety. By doing so, you helped to avert danger to me and to others in the crowd. You have my heartfelt appreciation." Outraged and distressed by all the negative press and his newly strained familial relations, Sipple sued the San Francisco Chronicle for invasion of privacy for
$1 million.
$15 million. But ultimately, in 1984, the State Court of Appeals outright dismissed his case, giving Sipple nothing for all that he'd lost over a selfless action.
Get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
This several-year ordeal caused Sipple's already fragile health from the horrors he sustained from his service in Vietnam, both mental and physical, to rapidly decline, as over the last few years of his life, he began to drink very heavily and was in and out of VA hospitals constantly, having been fitted with a pacemaker after gaining significant weight, and was even diagnosed with schizophrenia. Not even when Sipple's mother passed away would his father allow him to come home and attend the funeral.
Hey, that's fucked up.
And so Sipple had grown to resent his saving of President Ford, wishing he had simply done nothing. Sadly, on February 2nd, 1989, Sipple was found dead by a friend, Wayne Friday, in his apartment with a bottle of Jack Daniels next to him and the TV still on. When the coroner examined his body, they guessed he'd likely already been dead for 10 days. According to Oliver Sipple's older brother, George Sipple, his brother always felt that Ford could have at least shaken his hand or congratulated him in person. So although Oliver Sipple never got the thanks he wanted or deserved,
Never said thank you.
I think it's important that he at the very least be remembered by our generation as a real patriotic American that should never be forgotten. It's for that reason I wanted to tell his story. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day.